from illuminated wax. I'm sure you've seen the criticism of Democrats not being able to do anything. As Jon Stewart points out with Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it seems like everything the Democrats promise has to become later because there's too much on your plate. But so much what's done now seems like compromise, which doesn't seem like compromise because you didn't start out from a tougher position. A lot of it simply because our congressmen are scared of the screaming minority dining room tables marching on Washington. So far, the Democrats won't give us a public option, are giving polluters a break on cap and trade, have voted to extend the USA Patriot Act, despite only 3 out of 763 sneak and peek warrants being used to combat terrorism, haven't even started to discuss what kind of regulation reform needs to be made in our financial system, continues to extradite prisoners and hold them indefinitely, e.g. Bagram. Well, let me start with one of you. When are the Democrats going to grow a spine? Well, first of all, I don't think I can be accused of being intimidated by the dining room tables because that is a reference to a comment I made to a LaRouche lunatic who was waving around a picture of the president with a Hitler mustache. And so, no, I agree. Some of my colleagues made the mistake of trying to be too civil to some of these people. And I think, yes, it's important to be civil, but it is also important not to snivel. And I think we crossed the line. I think our people are fighting back. But let me take one particular part of the question, which is simply wrong, factually. Have not even started to discuss what kind of regulation reform needs to be made in our financial system. This is Friday. I spent Wednesday and Thursday in committee sessions, actually Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in committee sessions, dealing exactly with that. Here's what we've done so far. We passed a bill in August, the Democrats did, I referred to this earlier, to give shareholders the right to vote, advisory, but in a way that will have a lot of impact. And it has to be advisory for technical reasons, but to give shareholders the right to vote on the salaries, compensation of the top executives. We borrowed that from England. It's called Say on Pay. The boards of directors and the top executives are very close to each other, and they're never going to be tough on each other. So we put the shareholders in. The shareholders, by the way, are unions in pension funds and other institutional investors, universities, and they'll be tougher on this pay. The business community hated that. We passed it. It hasn't yet gone to the Senate. We also, very importantly, said to the regulators of all the financial institutions, we insist, we mandate you to adopt rules that prevent the kind of bonus system whereby the people who make the decisions get a bonus if their gamble pays off and don't lose anything if it blows up. It's basically heads they win, tails they break even. Now, if I told you that you could make a lot of money taking risks, but you wouldn't lose any money if the risk didn't go well, you take a lot of risks. The problem here is that these people are taking risks with other people's money. They're risking the company's money because the company will lose money, the shareholders will lose money, and the economy gets hurt. So yes, we have already passed that, and I'm waiting for it in the Senate. We just passed a bill, and if you remember, I asked you to step out for a minute. I wanted to talk to the head of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the Obama appointee, worrying about derivatives. Because there was a quote in the newspaper that sounded like he was critical of the bill we passed yesterday. He said, no, I think it was a great advance. I don't agree with it altogether, and I know he doesn't. So we have already begun derivatives. Let's put it this way. What AIG was dealing with wouldn't be allowed. A regulator will be there to stop it. We're in the business now of trying to pass a separate bill to create a consumer protection agency that the Chamber of Commerce, a very right-wing business-oriented organization, is denouncing as terrible. So over the objection, and by the way, the Republicans voted unanimously, no, I think 3 Republicans out of 177 supported our compensation bill. No Republican on the committee, no, again, I don't want to exaggerate. 1 Republican on the committee supported our bill to restrain derivative trading. We don't think any Republicans are voting for the consumer agency. And finally, we are going to create a systemic risk council that's going to have the power to look at everything being done in the financial industry and say, you've got to stop doing these risky things. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we have already passed the bill again to restrict subprime mortgages. And one final thing that's very important that's going to be in our bill, and I've been talking about this for a year. A very large part of the problem we've had with the financial crisis is something called securitization. 30 years ago, if you want to borrow money, you went to a bank and you borrowed money from the bank, but you were going to have to pay the bank back. And the bank frisked you pretty good. They looked at you, turned you upside down. You know, you felt like you were talking to Lionel Barrymore and, you know, It's a Wonderful Life. Because they knew that if you screwed up, they wouldn't get paid. Then came something called securitization, in which lenders lend you the money, but then turn around and sell the right to be repaid to somebody else. And you know what? Your mother was right. People are more careful with their own money than they are with other people's money. So a lot of loans got made. That's how poor people got loans they shouldn't have gotten. To be fair, the banks didn't do as bad a job here. It was the non-banks that did it. But in all cases, the loans that were made that were securitized were the bad loans. People made loans, and they got paid off. One of the things we are going to put into the legislation is nowhere, and by the way, 30 years ago, almost all loans were made, and they were going to be, the people who made the loan were the ones who were going to collect. Today, well over, I'd say 70% of the loans are these securitized loans where the borrower pays back somebody else, and the lender, the originator of the loan, gets out of the business. We're going to mandate that nobody be allowed to do that, that you're going to have to keep, for example, at least 10% of that loan. And that makes a big difference if you look at the profit. So, yeah, we are well underway here. In other areas, on public option, here's the problem. We have a Democratic majority. You need, the House will pass a public option. You need 60 in the Senate. There are Democratic senators elected from parts of the country that are more conservative. Now, I wish that weren't true. But, you know, I wish I could eat more and not gain weight. I wish I had the same energy level today that I had 30 years ago. Wishes don't always work. And many of us are keeping pressure up for the public option. I don't give up on it yet, but we do have these, you know, we have a different party system than some other countries. We have a great deal of localism. Tip O'Neill said it correctly, all politics is local, and that's the problem. So, you know, 90% of the Democrats or more in the Senate want the public option, but you do need them more. Again, partly the problem is this. It didn't used to be that you would take for granted that you would get no Republican support for anything. There was no Republican support for an adequate economic recovery bill. We had to cut it by $25 billion and more to get the Republicans. There was no Republican support, maybe Olympia Snow, and even she's not for the full public option. In the committee I chair, there was no Republican support for curtailing derivative trading, no Republican support for reining in excessive compensation, no Republican support for setting up a consumer protection agency. So what that does is give a handful of Democrats from conservative areas a problem. As to the Patriot Act, I agree. I'm critical. This is one where the Obama administration, which has generally been good on the issues I've been talking about, has been weak. I thought the Patriot Act was a mistake. I voted against it, and I do think that that's a problem. Finally, on the prisoners, I do think the Obama administration has been trying to do the right thing here. I am baffled. There are two things that really puzzle me today that the Republicans talk about that appear to be accepted by some people. One is that if the government sets up an insurance company, it'll be terrible because it will interfere with those wonderful, generous private insurance companies that only have our best interests at heart. In fact, of course, the opposite is the case. The reason the right wing is afraid of the public option is they know how popular it will be. And you know, they simultaneously say it'll be, I don't know if people can hear, those are the bells that say the House is going into session, but we're not going to do anything, so no problem. The Republican discussion of the public option is, first of all, that it will be a terrible thing and anybody who gets into it won't get enough service and it'll be too restrictive. And two, that this terrible restrictive thing will be so popular that everybody will be able to join it and undermine the other. Obviously, they can't both be true, and they really mean the second. And my own view is that they're very afraid that a public option will be so popular it may lead to a single-payer system, not because anybody mandates it, but because the people will want it. The other odd thing is, oh, look, we have some dangerous people that we're holding either at Bagram in Afghanistan or in Guantanamo, and some of them may not have committed crimes, and some of them did. We should try them. But the argument you're getting from the Republicans is if we have some people that are very dangerous and we try and convict them, we can't have them stay in America. We have to send them elsewhere. Well, I don't know, maybe they want to send them to Scotland so they can be released by like the guy from Libya. I mean, this is very odd. Here's their saying, these people are very dangerous. Let's not lock them up in America where we can keep an eye on them. Let's send them to Yemen. You know, let's send them to some other country. Well, they are much more likely to get out. You know, look at the Libyan thing. If the guy who was convicted of the Lockerbie bombing had been locked up in the U.S., he wouldn't be home in Libya, although he does appear to be dying. That's what's so odd to me. In the state of Massachusetts, not far from my district, just across the line, we have the Plymouth County Jail. The shoe bomber was locked up there in the county jail. He hasn't gotten loose. Nobody's seen him walking around the streets with matches in his shoes anymore. So this notion that the very dangerous people should be sent to other countries rather than locked up securely in the United States is again upside down, just like saying let's have the private insurance companies protect us from the public option.